The way large organizations will set up their payment structures is designed essentially to use you like a credit card or like a bank and to give them credit, and it sucks. This is a video for anyone who's thinking about getting paid, and getting paid specifically in the creative industries and as a freelancer. As somebody who's running their own business and somebody who has a fair amount of experience with this sort of thing, I just wanted to sort of talk a little bit about what a struggle that can be. There's a lot of people online who will sell you templates and courses and contract templates and all that sort of stuff for terms of business and promise that this will get you around people not paying you on time and people not paying you. And I think, look, this will vary from country to country, depending on the laws in each of those countries. But what I've tended to find, and I've done sort of little bits of work all around Europe, in Australia, and here in the UK. And what I've tended to find with all of that is no matter how well armed you are with all of your terms and conditions and templates and things like that you've got, is that it can still be really difficult to get paid. And so what I wanted to do is dive a little bit further into that in this video. I'm not going to be naming any names or calling anybody out. Ultimately, a lot of the time, this isn't your actual clients, the people you're working with's fault, which is a really interesting thing. Like, it is and it isn't. And I wanted to dive into that a little bit. So if you are somebody who is a creative freelancer who is starting out in the industry, I wanted to give you a little bit of a sort of a warning. And it's not, this isn't to try and discourage you from getting into creative fields, but it is to be very mindful, not just mindful, very knowledgeable about every situation you're getting into, and not just relying on the fact that you bought some templates off somebody online to be able to rely on getting paid. Because a lot of the time, even if you signed a contract, that stuff simply doesn't work, and the organizations that you'll work with will not actually respect the terms of those contracts and might not even be legally obliged to respect the terms of those contracts. And there'll be all sorts of circumstances working with larger organizations, particularly in the way I do, where basically whatever you put in a contract doesn't apply because you will have to sign their terms and conditions, which I think is a very important part of the process to know about when you're starting out in the industry. And even for somebody like me who's been working in the creative industries for a long, long time, and I did a lot of work client side, working for larger companies, or within agencies where I wasn't directly involved in the billing process, and we had account managers and salespeople who dealt with all of that sort of stuff. I think it's really important for anybody who's going out there as a creative freelancer and doing the business side and the creative side all on their own to be aware of this sort of stuff. Even as someone with a lot of experience, I've always been kind of averse to sort of dealing with the money side of things. I don't particularly like doing sales and dealing with the business side of stuff. And it's not that clients try to take advantage of this. And I genuinely, for everybody who I've dealt with, definitely in the last several years, I've never dealt with anybody who's had negative intentions or who has sort of tried not to pay me. But the way large organizations will set up their payment structures is designed essentially to use you like a credit card or like a bank and to give them credit. And it sucks. It sounds unbelievable, but you literally cannot circumvent these structures. You can't get around these systems with as a creative freelancer, unless you just don't want to work for larger organizations. This will be completely different with smaller clients, and it is actually in a lot of ways a lot easier working with smaller businesses than it is with large companies. But large companies are a lot of the time where the budgets are, and you can just charge them more because of not only the size of the company, but because of how much they are going to use the content that you produce for them, or the art that you produce for them, or the music you produce for them, whatever it might be, your performance, if you're an actor or a voiceover artist or something like that. Those people would probably actually not be billing a large corporation directly for their work. I definitely didn't as an actor. When I did voiceovers, it was always a production company. But I guess corporate clients, as a creative freelancer, taking photos, making videos, any of those sorts of things, doing art for corporate clients. So look, what I want to discuss is basically like the structure that a lot of these companies have. And it seems to be like a global thing, no matter what country you work in or what company it is. A lot of organizations work with this very similar structure, where normally it's like 30-day terms. 30-day terms is basically, it's the industry standard. For most creative freelancers, I think 90 is It's ridiculous nowadays. And what 30-day terms is how long they have to pay you after they have received your invoice. That's all well and good. You can plan for 30 days. Some companies do 90 days, as I said, where they have 90 days in which to pay you. They will normally pay you on the 30th day or the 90th day. I would always push back on 90 days if anybody ever says that. Most companies I've found, if they try and give you 90 days, you can sort of say to them, hey, look, as a very small business, this doesn't work for me. Is there any chance we can at least go down to net 30? That's the accounting term for 30-day payment terms, where they pay you 30 days after receiving your invoice. Now there's a little caveat to this 30 days. For most creative freelancers, when they hear that, and look, me included, when people say, oh, we pay within 30 days, one of the things you tend to think, and I definitely thought when I heard that, is great. As soon as I've hit send on my email and they've received the invoice, then 30 days later, that's due. But a lot of organizations don't work like that. They will have supplier payment systems. And when you get onboarded as a supplier, they will put you into a system, and basically you will have to submit an invoice through the system. So that all sounds well and good, yeah? A piece of software where you can just submit an invoice, 30 days later get paid. Well, there's another caveat to that as well, is that you can't just log in, even though you've been set up as a supplier normally, and submit an invoice. What they have to do internally within these organizations, and this is where a lot of delays can occur, they have to actually submit a purchase order to you. That is them effectively doing an order, sending an order to you saying, look, we have approved spending money on this work, and here's the budget we've got allocated that you can invoice toward. And it varies slightly organization to organization, but most of the ones I've worked with have variations of this system where it's effectively like creating a project in Premiere or in Logic or in Final Cut Pro or something like that. They set up a project, it has the parameters, which in this case is the budget, and then you can send invoices toward that. And then on the other end, someone approves it, but basically as soon as your invoice goes into the system, that is the day from which they have to start paying you. So what a lot of them will do when they don't have the budget or they need to hold off or something like that is they'll delay putting your even your quote into their system. So a lot of the clients I have, they take your quote that you've given them for the work, they put that into the system, and then you can send an invoice that sort of gets paid against your quote. And sometimes, it goes up because there's extra hours, all those sorts of things. But broadly speaking, that's how it'll work. And the huge delay will come in like getting the people you're actually working with to either get the invoice through their system. A lot of the time, they won't actually have access to this payment system. A lot of people will neglect to tell you that. And they'll honestly, genuinely think their boss can do it. I know, because I've seen this when I've been client side. They'll think their manager or their boss can do it. What will actually happen internally is that person will have to get approval from somebody else. Even a lot of these large organizations with people with very high-powered sounding titles, director of this, VP for that, won't actually be able to actually make payments. It's kind of crazy. They'll have like, $1,000 to $2,000 or pound limits on credit cards for expenses and travel and those sorts of stuff. And then they have to escalate things quite high to actually get things paid. And so to clarify, and just to reiterate, so there can be this delay where people are actually just trying to get your invoice into the system to actually initiate the payment process at all. And so what can end up happening is these 30-day terms that you have, which sound just about bearable as a creative freelancer, actually can turn quickly into months and months and months. And I've had, very regular clients of mine actually struggle to be able to pay, even as large corporations, because they have these crazy systems in place where so many people have to approve things, and it's relying on somebody practically at CFO level, that's chief financial officer level, of a global international corporation, to approve things to be able to pay you. And it can really draw stuff out, and it can really be so painful as a freelancer. And you'll chase and chase and chase, and people will say, sorry, 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 sorry. So a lot of people at this point probably jumping into the comments going, well, this is where you have a proper contract. Now, the other problem then comes even before the invoicing part, in that when you get onboarded for a large corporation, when you become a supplier for a large corporation, typically they don't sign your contract. It can be very, very difficult for the people who bring you on, especially as a small freelancer. If you are a large agency with a big reputation, they are coming to you for something massive that nobody else can deliver, or you've got a big sort of celebrity name behind you, then there can be a lot more flexibility. And when I say celebrity, large influence, huge followings online, those sorts of things. If an organization is chasing you, they can sometimes find ways to get around this stuff with authorization from somebody on a much higher level. But as a normal supplier, or a marketing team, an internal communications team, whatever other team it might be, a sales team within an organization comes to you, they often don't have flexibility within their own system to be able to sign your contract. They have to give you their template contract, which has their template terms, which is normally, as I say, 30-day net. That's them paying you within 30 days of receipt of the invoice. And they don't sign your terms and conditions. Most people in an organization will not sign a contract on their organization's behalf because they don't have the power to. And what they make you do is sign up as a supplier, and in doing so, you are beholden to the terms that they have. And it can be so difficult then to actually get money in a timely manner from people. And I guess I'm not trying to dissuade people and to encourage you not to work for large companies, but I think it's really important that individual creatives who are getting into freelancing or getting into running their own agencies, I think it's really important that you know about this stuff going in, because a lot of us, particularly creatives who don't come from a business background and who have been artists or people who are sort of specialize in images, specialize in video, specialize in making music, specialize in whatever else, specialize in creating artwork or designing things, you don't necessarily realize that there's going to be so many hoops you have to jump through just to get paid. It just seems to make sense, right? In most situations where you pay for something, or you commission something, or you get somebody to do something for you, you either have to pay them in advance of delivering the service, or you expect that they'll click on a button online and pay you really quickly. I've got buttons that people can instantly click on my website and through banking systems that I've got and payment systems that I've got, where people can pay me instantaneously. But large corporations not only will be unwilling to do that sort of thing, but also a lot of employees within those organizations will be unable to do that sort of thing. They simply won't have access to a payment method that they're allowed to do that with. So they won't have, a company credit card. This is an access card for the studio I'm in. They won't have a company credit card that they can use to pay freelancers with, or they won't be approved to spend that amount of money. And none of them will be willing, as employees of a large organization, typically to pay thousands of pounds, thousands of dollars, even hundreds of pounds of dollars. In a lot of cases, they won't be willing or able to pay for that personally on their own personal cards as well. And you can't expect that from people to take on that cost for an organization. So it becomes a very difficult process getting paid. And I'm just thinking about this at the moment because I'm currently going through some delays in payments, and it's slightly hair raising. I'm having to cancel subscriptions for things. And I've got huge amounts of money coming in, like enough money to sustain me for months and months and months. But it's so frustrating to have to deal with these situations where companies literally cannot pay you, or pay you in a timely manner, or they spend forever with people going through layers of approvals for things when you've delivered work and they've got stuff that you have. There are some ways you can get around this. You can do things like only release final downloadable versions of things when you've received payment or a payment has been initiated. Those sorts of things can be incredibly powerful. And what I would suggest for most people is not making downloadable versions of audio or video available, or even unwatermarked artworks available until a payment has been initiated. And by initiated, I do mean that you've been able to submit an invoice and got confirmation that that will be paid. Because otherwise, if you always delay until you've got money in your bank, then people essentially stop working with you and go with another freelancer. And I think that's just the nature of it. But what you can do, say, for example, I'm working on a video right now. People have been reviewing it, watching the video back, leaving any sort of bits of feedback and making changes on it. So they've seen the whole whole video. They've got the final version viewable on an online review platform. I'm using the Sony Creative Media Cloud, which is really, really cool and gives you all this free storage. I definitely recommend checking it out. But people can watch the video back. They've kind of got it. They can watch it. Their internal customers or the people they're showing it to can watch it, but then they won't be able to post it anywhere or share it anywhere really, and in an unwatermarked format until the payment process has been properly initiated and there is money definitely coming toward you. Almost gatekeeping the work and making sure that they're not going to be able to use it for the intended purpose until the payment has been initiated, can be a great way of gatekeeping work if you need to. And I've definitely done that a few times. If you can work with smaller businesses or businesses who are willing to sign your contract and be beholden to your payment terms, that's great. As standard, what I offer people is 14 days because I understand it can be difficult for a lot of businesses just to have cash on hand to pay for things at a specific moment. I know definitely it is for me. So what I tend to do is try and give people 14-day grace period in which to pay things. And then you can add interest to late payments, those sorts of things as well. Here in the UK, if somebody is 30 days late paying you, then you can actually start charging them statutory interest. But the problem is if you do start doing that, then customers feel like they're being penalized and they may be less inclined to work with you, unfortunately, even though you are legally entitled to it. The other thing that's worth noting as well is that the definition of when that 30 days starts can be a little bit, and if you are signed up for a payment platform as a supplier with a large company again, then that can be quite difficult because basically, as far as they're concerned, they haven't received your invoice until it has been submitted through their platform. And by signing up as a supplier, typically somewhere in the small print, they require everything to be submitted through their platforms, regardless of what contract you think you've given an individual employee of the company. Those types of contracts where you send it to somebody and it says by agreeing to initiate the work, you are bound by my terms. Most big companies will fight that tooth and nail and will have an army of lawyers ready to fight you as well. And plus you don't want to start getting on the wrong side of people. So look, I'm not trying to scare people, but in a way I want to make you more aware of the situations you might find yourself in as a freelancer or somebody starting a small agency for the first time. I was just thinking about this because I'm going through this with like a couple of different clients at the moment where I've got apologetic people on the other end saying, hey, so sorry, we're trying to get these payments to you as quickly as we can, but we're jumping through all these hoops internally. And it's definitely something that I would advise people to be aware of. And look, if you can, budget for this kind of stuff as well and have funds available to pay your bills and things in advance. Because, yeah, this can be a tough thing to deal with. How can you circumvent it? It's really interesting. Well, you can't circumvent this stuff. If you want to work with larger companies, typically you are going to be bound by their terms and conditions as a supplier. Make sure that you agree with the people you're working with when they are going to submit things through their systems. And with some of my clients, not knowing this early on when I went into it, I've had to start making these agreements retroactively and even have people within the organizations who are kind of like the people who are on my side who can chase this stuff for me. Not that I'm trying to get people to do work for me within the organizations because they are my clients and I'm working for them. But I have people who understand and who can help chase this stuff. When people forget and don't understand, it's a weird bubble that you work in within a large corporation. And for them, for a lot of employees within these companies, having been on this side myself, they do feel disconnected from the people who pay things and the people who settle invoices for these organizations, and they will have little to no involvement day to day. And also, as I mentioned, have no power to actually pay invoices and actually have no power to access funds to actually send to you. So don't hold it against the people you're working with. It is an issue with the system. And I think there is a larger issue within the industry. In fact, the last time I was in this studio, I recorded an impassioned video about the state of the music industry and musicians getting paid. And it's definitely worth checking out because this is such an important reflection on the creative industries as a whole. You should check that out. I'll put a link for it up here, or maybe up here, depending on which side it is, left or right on the screen on YouTube. I can never remember. Definitely worth checking out. I'm going to continue this series on the business of creativity because I think it's really, really important. And what I will do on the other side from that other video, put that playlist up on the side for you. So you can watch some of the other videos in this series as well. But definitely check out the video on musicians getting paid because, as I say, it's representative of the entire creative industries. And I think it's such an important thing to fix. I think governments need to sort this out and legislate to protect smaller businesses of all kinds, because a lot of us do get ripped off by larger corporations, like musicians are right now. Anyway, look, that's my little rant. I hope that helps you. Please let me know in the comments how you've dealt with this, or how you have, how your experiences have been, or if this has been helpful to you before setting up a customer relationship. As always, the best thing to do when you're setting up a new relationship with a customer, no matter who it is and how nice they are, is be prepared, know exactly what the terms are, know exactly what the process is for the person that you're going to be dealing with, and when and how they will submit your invoices. It can all sound peachy and lovely at the beginning of things, and before you've actually delivered any work and worked on a project, and they'll say, yeah, no problems, or get you set up quickly and straight away. But there's some of those other gray areas about how they submit things internally and when they submit things internally, that on top of the minimum payment term that you have can directly affect actually the real amount of real world time, how long it takes you to get paid, and in turn pay your bills, pay your rent, pay all your Adobe subscriptions if you've got those sorts of things. Get Final Cut Pro or DaVinci, much safer because you don't have to pay for them month on month on month. Anyway, that's another video. Look, love you so much. You look wonderful today. Take care, and I will see you in the next video. Whoop.